Ella. Today I wanted to talk about how grief is inevitable, attachment is inevitable, and how to move through loss. Buddha said that life is suffering and attachment is the root of suffering, which it's definitely one of the roots of suffering. And then to move through it, you have to practice detachment, which I think can work for some things, like maybe smaller material things. But I think attachment is inevitable. Attachment to people, to purpose, to identity. And when these things shift or these attachments disintegrate, I think the grief is inevitable. I don't know if it's possible to really truly detach in a meaningful way. When we're talking about those meaningful things, it's really about how you move through grief and loss. And so then the question becomes, how do you move through grief and loss? I'm gonna start walking. Just feel it. Yeah, this is a good enough angle. So yeah, how to move through grief and loss. There's also the other point of denial being the first stage of grief and detachment. I think people can confuse detachment and denial and stay stuck in the denial phase, thinking they're detached, when really they're just not facing the grief or loss at all. And then, the stages of grief, those are really helpful. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. I forget the person who came up with those, but I'm pretty sure it was a woman. I'll put her in the description. But yeah, and we know the stages of grief aren't linear. You can bounce between all of them. And the question is, how do you ultimately get to acceptance? Well, a lot of denial, a lot of anger, a lot of bargaining, a lot of depression. If you have big feelings, that is. This video is probably for people who have big feelings. But maybe a charitable view of detachment is an acceptance that there will be loss in life. It's still attaching yourself anyway, or still letting yourself feel and be human. And I think to be human is to attach to things with meaning, people, purpose, identity, like I was saying. Just walking and talking. Yeah, this is a different format than my other videos, but it's just something I've been thinking about, and I walk a lot, so I might incorporate it more. We'll see. So some people are passing by, so I get self-conscious. But yeah, how to get to acceptance. And what exactly is acceptance? I think that's the bigger question to ask. What does acceptance of loss look like? Well, if you're moving past the denial phase, I think it looks like acknowledging current reality, where you have lost, or maybe you've never had, if we're talking trauma, something or someone. Not wanting reality to be any different than what it is. That's the acceptance part. That seems the opposite of denial. So it's incorporating the loss, living with the loss. So the flip side of anger, I think, would be peace. Peace with current reality as it is, with the loss. Not being angry at God or self or others or capitalism or, anything else, any other higher powers that be. My arm's getting tired. Oop. Okay, we're back. So, peace, right? It's interesting because usually anger occurs when a boundary has been crossed, but in loss, it's not so much about boundaries being crossed, but the anger comes anyway. More of that injustice kind of anger. So maybe part of acceptance is finding the just parts of the loss, or working to make parts of the loss more just could also be part of it. Because some things just aren't just, and some loss just isn't just doesn't make sense. But there is a way to make things more just. So perhaps that's also part of acceptance. Bargaining. Yeah, it's kind of easy to see the flip side of bargaining. It's integration, really. And I think bargaining also kind of speaks to jumping in between all the phases of grief and how they aren't linear. But, you know, what does integrating the loss look like? I think it's getting really similar to getting out of denial. Bargaining and denial seems somewhat similar. There's at least an element of denial in bargaining. Because if you truly accepted it, why would you be bargaining? Though there's an element of denial in all of them, I suppose. Ugh, my arm's getting tired again. I'm gonna adjust. Okay. Arm workout in my walk. Hold on. Can I switch the view? No. Never mind. There's a nice stream. I can show you this way. Well, here we go. Walking across the stream. I'm gonna go this way now. Hopefully this video isn't too bad for motion sickness. Yeah, bargaining. Bargaining. Just looking for a bargain. No. Yeah. How to get out of bargaining and into integration. fully accepting reality while still being open to those emotions, I think. That might seem like you're stuck in bargaining if you're bouncing back and forth, but I think that's actually part of the process. Surrendering somewhat, more steps. Step by step. Here we go. Okay. Yes. Letting your emotions come and surrendering to the process is also part of it. I think that comes up in bargaining. And when you're integrating the loss, what does that mean? What does that mean? Sorry, low power mode. Talking too much. Well, I think it's understanding why the loss happened, understanding what it means to you, and then letting go. And then there's the whole process of letting go, but first we have depression. Depression. Yeah, I feel like the denial within depression is often less, although still can be strong. But how could you not be depressed at loss? That kind of goes back to the beginning, that grief and attachment are inevitable. Depression is, well, I don't like to think of it as a loss of functioning. So that's sort of capitalistic, but I think it can be seen as a loss of creativity, a loss of purpose. Functioning is certainly impaired, but that should at least be framed in a way that, it's harmful to the individual, not to society, and that part gets lost sometimes. More steps. Okay, here we are. Depression. Yeah, grief isn't depression though. They are different. But feeling the grief gets you through the depression. Feeling is healing. Despair is how you get through it. Crying, breaking down. Verbal processing with others, that's really helpful. Journaling. Journaling at all stages is helpful for processing. Same with verbal processing. So acceptance. I think we know that this means letting go. And surrender, kind of what I was saying before. More steps. Going step by step. Sorry. But, yeah, letting go, surrender. I think that kind of incorporates everything I just said to get to the letting go stage and the surrender. And there are lots of things to surrender too, you know. If we're talking grief that comes from death, I mean, you kind of have to surrender to the circle of life at some point. Well, we all do, whether we want to or not. If you're grieving the loss of a person, you're grieving that attachment, and you kind of have to surrender to the fact that nothing is permanent, not even attachment, even though it can feel that way, which is kind of similar to the circle of life. Nothing is permanent. So yeah, this is kind of looping back. I just keep looping in thought circles, but maybe a charitable view of detachment is accepting that attachment is inevitable and loss is inevitable. Because nothing is permanent. But our emotions are very real. More steps. Yeah, in this process, it just will happen again and again. And, oh, low battery. And we have to accept that too. And maybe a charitable view of mastering detachment is surrendering to this cycle. All parts, even the attachment part. Because if you seal yourself off from attachment, well, what kind of life are you living? No attachment to people or purpose or identity. What kind of life is that? Just passed by a person again, but yeah, I think that's all I want to say. In talking this out, I got more ideas too. And I think that's part of why verbal processing is so great. Even saying things out loud can help you bring more ideas to the front of your brain. Yeah, I should do this more. But with that, see you in the next video. Tell me your thoughts. I'm really interested to hear them on these subjects. And I'm no expert on any of them, so I'm just a person who knows a little bit. The pretty basics of these things. So, yeah. Okay, catch you next time.